We'll be starting the event momentarily, just waiting for people to populate the Zoom.
So I won't get to see the people, right?
That's correct, but they're joining now. Give it another few seconds, and then others will join us as we get going here. Good morning. Welcome to the Long Island Association Special Executive Event. For those that don't know me, I'm Matt Cohen, new president and CEO of the Long Island Association. Excited to say that out loud. Excited that my first special executive event is with Congressman Tom Suozzi. I just want to, for the folks who don't know me, I just want to tell you that I am super excited, super pumped up, super enthusiastic, and can't wait to be working with you, our members, the larger business, broader business community, and elected officials like Tom to keep Long Island the best place on the planet. So we're going to do a lot of good things together. And with that said, I want to introduce Congressman Tom Suozzi, who, again, I feel very fortunate that he's my first guest as president and CEO. Representative Tom Suozzi, trained as an attorney and CPA, is the congressman representing the 3rd Congressional District in New York. He's a member of the powerful House Ways and Means Committee, the Chief Tax Writing Committee of the House of Representatives, serving on both the Oversight and Tax Policy Subcommittees. Congressman Suozzi is also the Vice Chair of the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus and Co-Chair of the Bipartisan Long Island Sound Caucus. In May of 2019, he was appointed to the Congressional Executive Commission on China. And prior to his assignment on Ways and Means, he was a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and House Armed Services Committee. As most of you should know, he served as the mayor of his hometown in Glen Cove from 1994 to 2001, and as Nassau County Executive from 2002 to 2009. I want to point out a special part of his bio to us at the Long Island Association and the business community, that in 2007, he was appointed by the governor to lead a state commission that proposed the first property tax cap, which has now become law. And like many things that are now trendy, Tom was the first. Property tax cap, downtown revitalization. He was really had a lot of foresight, and he was ahead of his time. And now we could see we're reaping the benefits of that wisdom. And of course, the LIA supported the property tax cap, which did become permanent. In 2010, Tom returned to the private sector. He's been involved in investment banking. He's a lawyer. He's been a law clerk, auditor. He's done everything. Fortunately for us, he's decided to, instead of doing anything else he could want, which he certainly could, he decided to dedicate his career to public service. And we're fortunate for that. Tom resides in Glen Cove with his wife, Helene, and 3 children, Caroline, Joseph, and Michael. With that, Congressman Suozzi, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you so much. And congratulations to you. I think it is so awesome that you got this job, and people are lucky to have you in this position. You've got great energy. I love the fact that you're a young guy. I think you're 39, right? How old are you?
39.
39. I was 39 when I became county executive in Nassau County. So
That's great.
You're just a great guy for this job. You have great experience. You've been doing this stuff for years, and I think we're all lucky to have you. And we're lucky to have Larry Waldman as the chairman and a great team. I want to give you one piece of advice. I think you should let the people be on the screen, because they want to network with each other. They want to see each other. They want to be seen. I think, and I want to see them too. So it would be good. I think people should, on these things, should be let on the screen. You'll get more people to show up because they'll get a
Fair
chance.
enough. Well, you know what? I didn't want your box to be so small. I figured people want to see you life size almost.
That's all right. Don't worry about that. So anyway,
thank you.
Can you put people up now or not? It was too late for that.
I will try.
All right. So anyway, listen.
Let me try to do that as you're doing this, okay?
Okay. So I'm really happy that I'm in public service all these years. I mean, I'm very fortunate to be in public service, and I'm really happy that I stuck with it all these years. I think I've accomplished a lot of great things, and I hope to accomplish a lot more. And I'm just figuring it out. People talk about term limits for Congress. I'm just learning how Congress works, and I'm getting stuff done, and I'm right in the middle of things, especially with the repealing of the SALT cap. That's existential for us here in New York. So I think that I will talk about how I think things are going in Washington, D.C. I'll talk about things generally, but then I'll open it up for questions, because I'm sure people have questions about specific things, and I want to hear what people are most concerned about. I'm very optimistic. I'm very optimistic about this president. I was the first member of the House of Representatives to endorse Joe Biden for the presidency. He announced it like 7 o'clock in the morning, and I endorsed him at 7:20 in the morning because I felt that he had the right background to be the president. But now I'm even more excited because every president, it sounds like I'm boasting. I'm not boasting, but Bill Clinton called me the other day. He talked to me for 30 minutes on the phone. And I said to him the same thing. I said, every president is going to get the opposing party to try and beat them up. That's just normal life. And the opposing party is going to beat up the sitting president. Some presidents know how to win that argument. They know how to win that battle because they understand the politics, they understand the policy, and they understand the people. And Bill Clinton, I think, was like that. And I think that Joe Biden is like that. He understands the politics, the policy, and the people. He knows he's going to get beaten up by Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy, and that's just life. And I don't think that necessarily Trump or Obama or even George Bush, even though George Bush had people around that knew how to get that stuff done, they didn't know how to win the fight when they came after you. And so I think that Biden is going to be very consequential because not only of the difficult times that we have faced, but because of the way that he will respond to the challenges that we face. And he knows what he's doing. He knows, he knows how it works, and he's got nothing to lose. So I think he's going to be a very consequential president. I'm very enthusiastic about his whole idea of going big and bold and building back better. We don't want to just go back to the way we were before, even though for many of us on this call, things were fine before the pandemic happened. We were all sitting pretty. But the reality is that we've got 5 crises. We got the healthcare related to the COVID crisis, which, it's been management that has brought us out of that. He's managed us well that we are getting out of this crisis. The previous administration, President Trump, they helped to get the vaccine, but they didn't put things in place. They didn't have it managed well to put it in place. Look what happened in India. Look what happens in other places in the country. They've got access to these things too, but it's not being managed. It's being managed properly here in the United States. So first is the healthcare. Second is the economy. And I think that this president is going to be very consequential as far as the economy. I think the economy is going to continue to come back and come back strong. We have to understand that, the effects of the pandemic have been cruelly uneven. Some people have not been affected at all, completely unscathed. Nobody got sick. Nobody died. I lost my father-in-law. He was 92 years old, got the coronavirus. He died within 36 hours. That was back in March, in the very beginning of this whole thing of last year. And, some people completely unscathed. Their businesses did great. They could work remotely. They kept their jobs. Certain online retail did great. Certain businesses were great. Other people were wiped out. You make under $40,000 a year, 25% unemployment. You're in a catering business on Long Island, you're wiped out. You got to come back. We're trying to help them. You're in a restaurant business. Some did great, did takeout, had outdoor dining. Other people, still in trouble. You're in industrial warehousing real estate, you're fine. You're in office real estate, very big challenge. Residential real estate in Manhattan, big challenge. So it's very uneven, the effects of the pandemic. But we got to come back and we got to build back better. Then we got the whole problem of race in our country. I mean, it's always been there. It's always been real, but it blew up last year for us all to see between the pandemic and the George Floyd shooting and the protests. We got to fix this problem in our country. And it points to the basic inequities that exist in our system that need to be addressed. And I'll talk about that a little bit. Climate change, very real thing coming to a head. This president's going to address it. Great economic opportunities to be part of that change, I believe. Great for foreign policy, great on a whole bunch of different, great for jobs. Big crisis we have to face. And finally, the government. I mean, it's just, what the hell's going on? This January 6th commission that we just tried to set up. I'm part of the Problem Solvers Caucus. 29 Democrats, 29 Republicans. We meet all the time. We endorsed this January 6th commission. We delivered more than half of those Republican votes to vote for them to approve the January 6th commission to investigate, like a 9/11 commission, what actually happened with the insurrection on January 6th. I was there in the chamber when it happened. I was there when the woman got shot. I could hear the gunshot. I was one of the last people to get out of the chamber. hearing people banging on the doors, breaking the windows. I mean, I came out, I finally got with one of the last people to get out of the chamber, saw the guys lying on the ground with their hands behind their backs, with the handcuffs on. And so, we have to get to the bottom of this whole thing. And this divisiveness in our country, I believe is a result of the outsized voices of people on the extremes, the far right and the far left, that are exacerbated by cable news, which is a relatively new phenomenon. News 12 and CNN have been around for a long time, but the proliferation of cable news is a relatively new phenomenon. We haven't figured out how to deal with the fact that people are trying to sell on these news programs as opposed to inform. They're trying to sell a message, and they're trying to get advertisers to buy their advertising. I mean, when everything's said and done, the highest watched show on Fox or on MSNBC, 3 or 4 million people watch those shows. That's it. There's 330 million people in America. So, but they have outsized voices. 60% of Americans do not graduate from college. That's a reality. And a lot of people are being misinformed. Then on top of the cable news, social media. Most people followed, the most people most engaged are the most extreme voices. A lot of misinformation out there on social media. That's a new phenomenon. We haven't figured out how that's affecting us yet. And then you go on top of that, and you have our foreign adversaries, which we all need to be concerned about. It's the biggest thing we should be concerned about. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, they are using social media. They are using our free society, and they are populating us with misinformation, and they are trying to exacerbate civil unrest in our country. Even with Israel and Palestine right now, the Hamas, they are fomenting the disconnect in our country. There is misinformation being spent and just trying to, Black Lives Matter versus Blue Lives Matter, whatever the hot issue is, our foreign adversaries are trying to get us all pissed off at each other. And it's backed up by the other things I talked about. And then you put on top of that the politicians who are just pandering to their base because they're worried about a primary. Republicans pandering to the far right, Democrats pandering to the far left, and nobody doing the stuff in the middle, which is where most of the answers are. So we have to be conscious of these big structural changes that are taking place. We have to fight against them. So those are the 5 big crises: healthcare related to the pandemic, economic related to the pandemic and inequity generally, climate change, race, and just government and these societal changes that are taking place. I'm right in the middle of this stuff. Like I said, I'm very happy that I've devoted my life to public service. I'm happy I lost, quite frankly, and it doesn't sound right, but I mean, I'm happy I lost for county executive, and then I was out in the private sector for 7 years, so I made enough money so I could pay for my kids' college and pay for the mortgage. But I'm happy I got back into public service. And so the big fight for me right now, I mean, my problem that I have, I guess it's a weakness and a strength, is that I get involved in too much stuff. I get interested in too many things. I see Dave Capella on here. He's got the North Atlantic Rail there. I'm interested in that. I'm working on that. I get involved in too many different things. But the big thing that I'm trying to keep at the top of my agenda every day is the state and local tax deduction. I think it's existential for Long Island, for New York City, for New York State. It's the same goes for New Jersey and California and Illinois and Massachusetts and other blue states, quite frankly, that have high taxes. Why do we have high taxes? I've been fighting this issue of taxes my whole life. Well, we've got more unions than anybody else in the country. In New York, we take unions for granted. I'm chairman of the Labor Caucus now. I helped form it. We have more unions in New York State than anywhere else in the country. And every public employee is unionized. And in the rest of the country, only 25, 30% of the public employees are unionized. 20% of our private sector employees are unionized. In the country, 6% are unionized. And there's a hate for unions in the rest of the country. And we all have been dealing with this because it's more expensive. We know that here on Long Island. It's been a challenge for us over the years. But the reality is that's delivering quality of life for people that just is unparalleled to other people in the country. The American dream is based on a simple idea. I'll work hard, and in return for working hard, I'll make enough money so I can buy a house, educate my kids, pay for health insurance, and retire one day without being scared. So too many people in our country are working hard. They just can't live a decent life. And if you're making the minimum wage in the country is $7.25 an hour. There are actually 20 some odd states that have a $7.25 an hour as the minimum wage. Let's say it's $10 an hour. $10 an hour, 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year. That's $20,000 a year. You're going to buy health insurance? You're going to buy a house? You're going to educate your kids? You're going to retire with some money in the bank? I don't think so. $15 an hour. That's $30,000 a year. Okay, so there's just too many people working hard in our country. And this is where a lot of this anger is coming from. They're working hard and they're not living a decent life. We got to figure out how we're going to address that, because we've created enormous wealth in our country since the end of the 1980s. Dow Jones has got up 1,500%, 15 times. The GDP has gone up 800%, 8 times. We've created enormous wealth, but we haven't shared it with people who go to work every day. We have to figure out how do we, I don't care if you're conservative or you're a liberal. We in America should believe if you work hard, you make enough money, and then you have a decent life. And then because you have that decent life, you'll volunteer be a baseball coach, a little league coach. You'll volunteer for the fire department. We want people to work hard and have a decent life in return, and then contribute to the rest of our society. So our costs are higher in New York because we have a lot of unions. We have the lowest rate of uninsured children in the United States of America. That's a good thing. We have the best mass transit system, which even drives us crazy, but I mean, best mass transit system in the world with the lowest rate of greenhouse gases per capita, the cleanest place in the world, but it costs a lot of money. So we have a whole bunch of things that cost a lot of money. Now, do I think that New York State needs to be a lot more competitive? I absolutely do. I think we have to figure out how to reduce our taxes in New York State, especially our property taxes. That's still the awful challenge for all of us. We have to make New York State more competitive. When I was born, we had 42 members of Congress. I was born in 1962. There were 43 members of Congress in 1962. Today we have 27. It's going down to 26. We are losing influence in our country. New York is getting weaker and weaker all the time. That's why we got beat up for 9/11 to try and get the money we needed then. We got beat up to try and we had a fight to get the money for Hurricane Sandy. We had a fight to get the money during the pandemic. And now we got to fight to get SALT back. But we don't have that many people necessarily on our team. And we are losing influence. We have to figure out how to increase our competitiveness, increase our population in New York State, especially upstate New York. And by doing so, have more influence in our national affairs, because we are still the biggest net donor to the federal government. We send more money to the federal government than we get back than any other state in the United States of America. Why? Because we have a lot more wealthy people and we have a lot more middle-class people in these union jobs. You're a teacher and a carpenter, you're making $150,000 in your household. You're paying more in taxes. So we are the biggest net donors to the federal government. We pay more than we get back than any other state. So it costs more to live here. Now, the covenant that was set up in the United States of America started with the Civil War under Abraham Lincoln paying for the Civil War, but that was declared unconstitutional. Then the federal tax code started in 1913. There was a big fight at the time, and they said, listen, the governors, the mayors, they said, we don't want the federal government coming here and taking the long arm of the federal government, reaching in and stopping us in our states and our cities from being laboratories of democracy and doing what we think is best for our people. And they said, no, don't worry about it. We're going to do a federal tax, but we're going to let you deduct your state and local taxes so that we don't stop you from doing what you want to do at the local level. That was the agreement from 1913 on. And it was in place for over 100 years. And then the 2017 tax code, which was done very quickly, quite frankly, there was no time to organize against it. And they capped the SALT deduction at $10,000. That sucks for us on Long Island and for New York State. And why is it bad? Not only because of the people that have to pay more money, and they're, I'm particularly concerned about people who are making $150,000 or $200,000 in their household that are hard hit by this. But I'm also concerned about wealthy people. Why? Because I don't want them leaving. I don't want you moving to Florida. I don't want you to go to Palm Beach and live there for 6 months and a day so you don't have to pay your state income taxes. I don't want you going to South Carolina when you retire. I don't want you going to North Carolina on a golf course somewhere. I don't want you going to Arizona. I don't want you moving away, because when you leave the rest of us behind to hold the bag. The middle and lower income people are left behind holding the bag. So what's going to happen? Either your taxes are going to go up to make up the difference, which we all know we can't possibly take that, or we're going to cut the services that we think are what make this a better place to live. So we got to get the state and local tax deduction back. A lot of people don't care about the state and local tax deduction the way we do in New York and New Jersey and California and Illinois and Massachusetts and Maryland and a few other places. Okay, we're fighting a tough uphill battle. The Republicans don't want to give it to us. I got 10 Republicans, 15 Republicans that would help us, but there'd be game playing related to all the other stuff. And the Democrats, I got most of them helping us. I got a lot of key important people helping us, but there are some people working against us because there's a big thing this is for the rich people. Well, it does. A lot of the money does go to wealthy people, but we want them to stay here so we can do the progressive programs that we have. The same progressives that are going against us are the same people that I say, listen, you want people to have there's a race. Janet Yellen, let me just say, Janet Yellen, who's the Secretary of the Treasury, said she wants a corporate international minimum tax. Why? So we don't compete amongst our allies in the industrialized countries for who has the lowest taxes, and thereby we have a race to the bottom as far as what we do in our countries, the services we provide. We don't want to race to the bottom, competing on cheaper cost. Great. Let's not have a race to the bottom in the United States of America. You can go to Florida. It's cheaper in Florida. They don't insure their children. They don't have a mass transit system. You can go to Texas. They don't regulate their utilities. When it got cold outside, they shut down their entire grid because they don't regulate their utilities. You can go to places where they don't have sewers and they got red tide. Oh, they're going to, in 30 or 40 years, wait till their infrastructure is old, the way our infrastructure is old. When we hand out the money in the federal government, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Georgia, Texas, Arizona, they're building new roads and new sewers and new bridges and new hospitals and new schools. When we get the same money, when we don't get the same money, we get less money because we're the biggest net donor. We're fixing old roads and old bridges and old sewers and old hospitals and old schools. And we're hanging out for dear life and we're subsidizing these people to kick our ass. So we have to figure out how we can get our fair share. So I've said, Mr. President, I support you and I support your big, bold programs that you have, but no SALT, no deal. I will not support any changes in the tax code unless we get our SALT deduction back. And I sent, what happened was I first sent a letter from 11 members of Ways and Means. I'm on Ways and Means. We set taxes in the country. Said we support you on the American Rescue Plan, Mr. President. It's so important. We got to get that done quickly. But the next big thing you do, like infrastructure, you got to deal with SALT. Crickets. We didn't hear anything. We heard big and bold. We heard increase the corporate tax, increase this, do that, but nothing about SALT. So then I came out and said, no SALT, no deal. I got Josh Gottheimer from New Jersey and Bill Pasquarello from New Jersey joined me. No SALT, no deal. 3 votes makes a big difference when you got to get all the Democrats to vote for you. Then we got about 8 people to sign on to something. Then I got 17 out of the 19 Democrats in New York State to sign on saying we will not hesitate to vote against this plan to Pelosi and Steny Hoyer unless we fix the SALT deduction. California wrote a similar letter. Not everybody's as strong as going to hold out the way I'm going to hold out to the last minute because you get beaten up for this. They're mad at you that you're not just going along with the program. Oh, we'll take care. I said, I love you, love the plan, going to help any way I can. No SALT, no deal. So there are a lot of people that are very influential people that are calling me up and say, keep it up, keep going, don't give up. People that in our party in elected office. Chuck Schumer did a press conference with me at the end of in the middle of 2020. He said, if I become the majority leader, this will be a priority for me. When I introduced my bill on January 28th or so, after he had become the majority leader, he introduced the exact companion bill in the Senate on the exact same day. So Senator Schumer is with us, but he needs us to get it out of the House to get it over to the Senate with SALT in there. Now, are we going to get the full repeal? That's a heavy lift. It's very expensive. Why is it hard to get SALT back? Because it costs a lot of money. Costs a lot of money. Costs $84 billion a year, $380 billion before it comes back. And Democrats will say, we want to spend that money on something else. And Republicans will say, we want to spend that money on the corporate tax. That's how they paid for the corporate tax cuts, was by taking our SALT, and how they paid for the rate at 37 from 39.6 down to 37, and a bunch of other stuff that they did. So, and some states, some Democrats, they could care less about SALT. If you're a Democrat from Florida, you don't really care about SALT. You don't have income taxes. So this is a real fight, but I think I know what I'm doing as far as the politics goes, and I just got to hold out because I'm getting a lot of pressure, to say I'm going to soften. So, but I know how important this is to Long Island and how important it is to New York City and New York State and to similarly situated places. And I believe, not just the politics, from a policy perspective, this is really important to us. So, will I negotiate something? Yeah, I'll negotiate something. But, for right now, no SALT, no deal. Okay, so I can talk about a million other things, but I talked for way too long already. So let me just open it up for any questions.
All right. Thanks, Tom. That was great and really informative, and we appreciate it. BA, I see you raising your hand. Don't worry. I got you. But before you go, BA, I'm just going to ask a question first. Tom, you're the vice chair of the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus. But as we know, there's more division than ever. Yesterday, President Biden signed the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act, bipartisan bill, finally. What else can we do on a bipartisan basis? Is there a chance infrastructure, but will be bipartisan? Will it wind up being party line? What else can we do on a bipartisan basis these days?
The chairman of the Ways and Means Committee is a great guy. His name is Richie Neal. He's from Springfield, Massachusetts. He's been around for he was a mayor of Springfield. He's been in Congress for 28 years, whatever it is. He's an old school guy. He loves the institution. He loves the Ways and Means Committee. And he says, this is legacy stuff right now. This is big time stuff that we're involved in. And infrastructure has always been the most bipartisan thing that you could possibly do. And we're having this tough time with it. Why is it a tough time? Since I've been in politics, every politician is in favor of infrastructure. Okay. I've never met a politician who's not in favor of getting money for roads and bridges and sewers. And, everybody wants that money. Oh, yes, do this. Should we spend it on broadband? Oh, I don't know. We should spend more on ports. So we should spend more on money on this. So everybody's for infrastructure. Nobody wants to pay for it. Nobody wants to put up the money to pay for it. And that's always been the problem. So I'm willing to bet that listen, I'm Mr. Bipartisan. I've been trying to do bipartisan stuff and have done bipartisan stuff on a lot of big things. And this should be bipartisan. The big, bold plan that Biden has proposed will not be bipartisan. If we do a scale down and we just do roads and bridges and sewers and airports and maybe broadband and a little bit of green stuff, but not a lot of green stuff with the electrical grid, we could probably get a bipartisan deal for $1 trillion. And then the Democrats would try and do all the other stuff as part of the reconciliation plan, where you only need 50 votes or pieces of it, I should say. I don't think that, and I went to a meeting in Maryland. The governor of Maryland held a meeting along with the governor of Pennsylvania was there, and some other governors came on, and Joe Manchin was there, and Susan Collins, and Mitt Romney zoomed in, and a couple others zoomed in, and we had about 8, 10. Cassidy from Louisiana was there. We had about 8 or 10 senators. We had about 30 members of the Problem Solvers Caucus, Democrats and Republicans, and we tried to lay out a plan, a bipartisan deal for about $1 trillion. If we do that $1 trillion scaled back bipartisan plan, it won't involve SALT because there will not be any changes in the tax code because nobody's going to want to pay for it. They're going to pay for it by doing what they call a tax gap, putting more money into the IRS so they can collect them, which is a no-brainer. I mean, I've been talking to the IRS commissioner about this a lot. We'll collect hundreds of billions of dollars more in taxes if we just gave the money to the IRS to actually hire the people. We have less people working at the IRS, smaller budget at the IRS than we did in 2010. They went through this whole thing, if you remember, when the IRS was going after the Republicans were saying they were going after conservative groups, and they cut back the IRS. They said we want to abolish the IRS, if you remember. Democrats say they want to abolish ICE. Republicans want to abolish the IRS, which is both asinine. And as a result, it's weaker than it's ever been. So if we just fund the IRS and do more audits, sorry everybody, but we'll collect the money. We'll collect a lot more money. So that's what the Republican deal they're talking about doing on a bipartisan basis is. So I'm conflicted. I want to do a bipartisan deal. I believe in bipartisanship. I think the country needs to do it. If we don't do it on infrastructure and we don't do it now, come September, it's all over. Everybody's going to be running for office for 2022 by then already. So there'll be no shot for a bipartisan deal. So this is the only shot we got to try and get some bipartisanship. But McConnell and McCarthy can't even vote for the January 6th commission. I mean, come on. So I'm conflicted because I want to get a bipartisan deal done, but if we do the bipartisan deal at $1 trillion, we're not going to get salt in there. We're only going to get salt if we do changes in the tax code. So, so yes, we could get it done, but I don't know that if nobody knows the answer whether it's going to happen or not. It's all how hard the president's willing to push.
Going to go to B.A. Schoen, then Ernie Canadeo, then Ernie Fazio. Anyone else has questions, just let me know in the chat and I'll call on you.
B.A. Schoen, king of the whaleboat rowers.
Hi, Tom. It's good to see you. I look forward to Sunday dinner with you soon.
Thank you, buddy. June 13th at La Bussola, Grandma's Sunday dinner.
You know, your 5 problems facing us are true and big. There's a 6th one, the big I, immigration. It seems like Texas is a long way away, but in that period when you were out of government, we had an influx on Long Island of about 2,500 unaccompanied minors that were put in our public schools without any warning, without any forethought planning, or most importantly, money from the federal government that paid for some of those costs. Now, Representative Israel and King got together and they got us a pittance, but we understand there might be 5,000 students coming from this latest influx.
Where did you hear that from, B.A.?
It was reported by the new National School Boards Association. It's projection of how many people they had last time when they had the surge and how many have come in since January. So that they are basically allocated by the federal government, relocated with relatives and associates, friends. And before they're sent here, we would like to have some notice. We would like to have some plan.
We'd like to have some funding.
And we'd like to have some money. Yeah, so it's a bipartisan issue.
I think you were on the call with me the other day with Lorraine, and Lorraine, who else was on that call? But we talked about this issue. You're on mute, Lorraine. We talked about that call the other day. We're looking into that now.
It was the superintendents along with you and the district superintendents. And the concern is right now that we will be seeing a surge again because the federal government will be placing some of these youngsters where with other relatives or in communities where they would be tended to. The difficulty is those are. Yeah,
I'm very familiar with this issue. You know, Glen Cove was one of the places that was hit. I completely understand and I'm empathetic to it because we get the kids and they don't give us the money to pay for it. It's on top of it. I don't think we can handle that type of influx again. So I'm in the process of trying to figure that out. So you have to give me a little bit of time. So just follow up with me. And BA, I think you have my contacts. Send me that school board's article that you're talking about that you read. I would appreciate that.
I will.
Okay. And listen, I went down to the border recently. It was the only bipartisan trip down to the border, Democrats and Republicans. My answer to this whole thing is we need better border enforcement. Should be a lot more with like technology. It should be, there's a company actually on Long Island that has technology that you can mount on trucks that, uses radar and you can see where people are crossing. The dense vegetation down there is amazing as far as where people hide. It's a long, the Rio Grande River is a long, long, long way. It's not easy. It's thousands of miles of border. But the key is we need an Ellis Island. We need a huge processing facility on our southern border, and we should have another huge processing facility on the Mexico-Guatemalan border. And it should be a place that you could do everything in one place, because a lot of the right now, to cross into the United States of America, which is the busiest border legally in the world, the biggest cross-border commercial traffic in the world is the southern border of New York, the United States with Mexico. To cross legally and to come in for asylum legally, you can only handle like 40 people a day in each of these little beat up facilities from the 1950s. It's absurd. It should be a massive, giant facility where you can do the medical screenings. People can stay there. you can get right now, the big backlog is between the immigration guys and the Health and Human Services people working together. And Health and Human Services can't keep up with the load of where they're going to put people. So they get backed up over here. And that's where you see the people all sleeping in the places in the cages with these silver blankets on them. It's a management problem, really, is a big part of this thing. So you need to do a better job with enforcement. You need to have a better processing system, because 88% of the people that do get processed get sent back. They don't qualify. And so it would probably be higher than that if we had better processing facilities. So this has been going on since I was mayor of Glen Cove. I was the first place in the country that had to deal with built a shape-up center on the east coast of the United States of America with the newcomers from Central America, mostly from El Salvador in my hometown of Glen Cove. This is not a new phenomenon. This is not Biden. This is not a Trump. This is not Obama. This is not Bush. This goes back to Reagan and the civil wars in El Salvador. And I'm just, it's so solvable. But you can't solve any problem in an environment of fear and anger when everybody's yelling at each other. You need people like you do in your businesses every day. You sit across the table and you try and figure out, how are we going to work this problem and solve it? That doesn't happen because it's all this BS related to everybody, pointing fingers at each other. We're having this massive fight with China. China is good. We do not underestimate the fight we are in China. I'm on a thing called the Congressional Executive Commission on China, Executive Congressional Commission on China. You wouldn't believe what they do to their own people, with the Uyghurs and the Hong Kong students and the Tibetans, and they have a plan, and they are kicking our butts. The Belt and Road Initiative and technology, and how they cheat on information tech, on IP and trade. They cheat all the time. So they're beating us. We're going to have to fight back, and people are finally waking up to that reality. We can't bring all that stuff back to the United States of America. It's too expensive because of the unions I was talking about before, or because of the environmental controls, or this or that. We don't want to race to the bottom to become more like them. But instead of just going to Vietnam and Korea, we should be encouraging a lot of these businesses that we want to take away from China to go to the Northern Triangle, to go to Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, so that they'll put the people to work and they'll increase the standard of living in those countries. And we'll beat China in the process, as well as addressing part of our immigration problem. Is that hard to do? Yeah, it's hard to do because of the gangs and the corruption and the drugs and stuff like that, but it's doable. I was meeting with a bunch of Guatemalans the other day, Guatemalan business people. They need low interest rates so they can invest in their own green economy that they're doing. They got more hydroelectricity in Guatemala than most places. So it's all very doable. It's just that people got to stop with the, the extreme talk. All right. What's the next question?
Ernie Canadeo. Ernie, would you like to ask your question?
Sure.
Hey, Ernie.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Tom.
Hey, buddy.
So salt obviously is critical. I just lost 3 wealthy friends to Florida because in part of the estate tax, which is worse here than even the federal tax. And I'm just wondering if that's on any.
You're at New York State's estate tax?
Yeah.
Well, I don't influence. I don't control New York State politics. I tried that once. It didn't work out too well for me.
Right.
Didn't work out too well for Elliot Spitzer either, though. Then I lost to Mangano. Then look what happened to him. Anybody's ever beaten me in a race, their life is over after that.
So you don't know if it's on anyone's radar in New York.
I don't want to interfere with what the New York State people are doing.
Okay.
If I run for governor, I'll talk about the estate tax. I mean, the bottom line is we have to make New York State more competitive.
Right.
We have to figure out how can New York State compete in this place where it's easy to move somewhere else. And I think New York State's the greatest. Long Island is the greatest place in the world, except for our taxes. That's it. If we didn't have high taxes on Long Island, we would be the premier location in America. And so, we need to get that mindset. So we got to figure out how we could accomplish that.
Right.
And a lot of it has to do with, I'm not going to go into that part, but so I just think that estate tax affects so few people and it doesn't bring in all that much money the way, with the changes that are made. We have to do it in a smarter way that makes us more competitive in the process. We'll ask Pat Galtieri. She's on the phone. She knows this stuff cold. Okay.
Next question, Ernie Fazio.
How you doing,
Good
Ernie?
morning, Tom. How
Hey,
are you?
buddy.
As you know, I've been working with the maglev people. I just got off the reading a very lengthy article about the rails in China. They're huge. They dwarfed anything else that's been done in the world. And America has been so competitive in technology in the past, and we have the means to do it. Now, I want to impress upon you that maglev can be built at a profit to the people who invest in it, but we do need $1 billion to put up a demonstration project so that people can buy in. Is that something that's within the realm of possibility? I mean, $1 billion sounds a lot of money, like a lot of money to you and me, but $1 billion in this budget is not a lot of money.
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know who's pursuing maglev these days. I mean, I think maybe some people in California are talking about it.
Yeah, but they're not talking about maglev. They're talking about high-speed rail using tracks.
Who's talking about maglev? Where would you do the demonstration project?
We could do it right on Long Island.
I know, but you talk to Dave Capel about trying to get the third track in, and how, the takings and the right of
Capel is
way.
one of the most impressive promoters of an idea that I know, and he happens to be a friend of mine, and I see him on the screen here. I don't know that he and I together would have as much influence as you in the Congress.
Well,
So-
Ernie, I would love to be able to promote it. I remember Bob Mrazek talking about maglev in the 1980s or 90s, I guess it was. And
Well, back then we had Moynihan. Moynihan appropriated $750 million.
so I don't have the power to do that on my own. And I got my priorities right now are salt. And when it comes to infrastructure on Long Island, sewers are my big concern, and the North Atlantic Rail system, which I've been talking to Dave Capel and Bob Yarrow about. So
Yeah, I think that's a great idea too.
so I can't make maglev a priority for me.
Why can't we put maglev in that northeast corridor?
Well, talk to Dave. If you talk to Dave, if he can figure that out, then fine with me.
Well, maybe Dave and I should have
Ernie, I'm going to
breakfast.
jump in because I have a question myself now. I don't want to spend too much time on one issue.
Yeah.
But thank you. Tom, I had a couple of questions. One, the infrastructure bill. Can you talk about how it will help address and or drive equity? What we saw what happened in terms of minority communities and how COVID impacted them. Will the infrastructure bill address this in any way?
Well, there'll be a very big push with anything we do with spending a lot of money to try and address inequity, not only racially, but economically. I was talking earlier about, how we've created wealth in America. So let me go a little off topic, Matt, for a second, okay?
Sure.
There's two systems in America, which I believe in very strongly: capitalism and democracy, okay? Capitalism says the better competitor you are, the more money you're going to make. It's the best system in the world. It's lifted more people out of poverty. It's made more people's lives better. It's been more innovation. Capitalism is the best system in the world. It's based on competition. The smarter you are, the harder working you are, the more innovative you are, the more risk-taking you are, the luckier you are, the better you're going to do. But some people are crappy competitors and they won't do well in our system, okay? Babies are not very good competitors, okay? Senior citizens that are frail are not good competitors. People that are disabled are not good competitors. People with mental illness are not necessarily good competitors. People that are not as smart as you are not as good competitors. You went to school with people, some people are doing great, some people are doing poorly. So not everybody's as smart as each other. Some people that get unlucky, they get cancer, they get sick. They're not necessarily good competitors. We don't want to make a system, though, that says that everybody who's a bad competitor, from babies to senior citizens to people with cancer, have a rotten life. So we have another system. It's called democracy. It says all men and women are created equal. Everybody has intrinsic human worth. So not everybody's going to get the same benefits of capitalism, but we want to put some protections in place that say, listen, you may not be the greatest competitor in the world, but we don't want you being homeless or living an awful life or going hungry or dying because you can't get health care. We're going to put protections in place. We're going to say you put a filter on your smokestack because you'll make more money with no filter, but we don't want to breathe that bad air. We want worker safety. You make more money without worker safety, but we want our workers to be safe. We want to make sure that people are not, go hungry because their parents were not doing well economically. We don't want babies to go starve. So the challenge of our lives in our system is if you do too much of one, if we do all capitalism by itself, we end up with a system where some people have crappy, awful lives. If we do too much democracy, too much all men and women are created equal with a bunch of regulations, we kill the golden goose that laid the egg. If you do too much of one, you go too far this way. You do too much of the other, you go too far that way. The challenge of our society and the reason we have to work together and have conversations and find common ground is to find the knife's edge between these two systems. Where's the happy system? It's not easy to find that knife's edge, the balance that keeps our economic engine pumping, but also puts protections in place to make sure people share in the wealth. So any system we do for infrastructure has to, I believe, share the money with the people who do the work so that the workers get paid money so that they can have health insurance and they can have a place to live and they can retire with some security. And we have to make sure that we share the wealth with people that have been historically excluded from sharing in the wealth, like Blacks especially. So, one of the greatest transfers of wealth from one generation to the next is home ownership. We saw enormous growth of the middle class in the United States of America in the 50s, 60s, 70s, even through the 80s, because a lot of people after World War II bought a house in suburbia, in Levittown, and all of Long Island. And they made their money, they built their house appreciated in value. They gave the house to their kids. The kids then had that wealth. They had a much more secure life. What happened? The Blacks got frozen out of that whole thing. They got redlined out of Levittown and other neighborhoods. So they never got the house when they came back from World War II, which they fought in. They never got to participate in buying a house. So they didn't have the wealth to give to their kids. So that's one of the big reasons. It's hard to imagine, but the difference between black and white today is still this enormous gulf in wealth. Forget about incomes, just how much your net worth is. And it's all related to, it's not all, but a lot of it has to do with just that basic systemic issue of you weren't able to buy a house in Levittown and, and everywhere else in the world. So we have to figure out how can we share the wealth with people who go to work every day, share the wealth with people who've been historically excluded, because if you're willing to work hard, we want you to have a decent life. So that's what we have to figure out how to do in our country. And the infrastructure, building back better, the child tax care credit, the job training programs, the idea earned income tax credit, prevailing wage, that's all part of how to do that. So listen, I've been in Long Island politics for so long. I know the whole thing about, the police and the teachers and, why do we have to build the big project union? It costs so much more to build a union. We could do it better, cheaper. We gotta find the balance that people who go to work every day get a good life, a good, decent life out of it. When it goes too far one way and people abuse the system, well, then we lose. So, but we don't want people to not have a basic standard of living. It's a balance like everything else. Remember in the 1980s, we were all worried about the car companies in Japan and Germany were going to beat us in everything. And then we changed everything and we became all focused on delivering money to the stockholders. And that's good. That was not a bad thing to do, but we lost focus on the workers and on the consumers and on the communities. And we have to get that back and we have to figure out how to balance it.
I have one more question. If anyone else has a question, please put it in the chat box. But if not, I have one final question, Tom. What could we do to help you? What could the LIA, our board, our members, the business community here on Long Island, how do we help you make the case for your priorities, for our priorities in Washington, whether it be SALT, infrastructure, and anything else?
I really need your help with SALT. Really need your help with SALT. I think it would be a big, big help if the LIA could compile because data is not easy to have because salt is still relatively new. The cap was 2017, and it's all commingled with the pandemic data. I need personal stories of people that are accountants and lawyers and business people who can say, I know this story, that story, that story. You don't have to use people's names, of people leaving to go to Florida or leaving to go to Texas or leaving to go to Arizona or North Carolina, South Carolina, because they lost their SALT deduction. I need to compile that, and I need to give that to the New York Times, because the New York Times screwed us in an editorial the other day. And I had a great conversation. They said, yeah, but where's the data that show that people are leaving because of SALT? And so we need to persuade them that we are hurting. I hear this a lot. I have a buddies of mine, the guy's an insurance broker. He's got very high net worth individuals. He says he usually loses 10 people a year to Florida because they moved because of they want to live there for 6 months and a day. He says he lost 140 people last year. And the pandemic's part of it, but salt's the main driver. And I was on a call with the Federal Bar Association today, lawyer talking about he had 10 clients leave because of SALT. So I need to know what people are hearing. And if you can help gather those stories for me, that would be a big help. And if anybody can come to Grandma's Sunday dinner on June 13th, that would be good too.
And Tom, I actually did get one more final question. We'll end on this question from Jeff Olson. Jeff?
Hey, Tom, Jeff Olson, Urban Edge Properties. How you doing?
Hey, Jeff, how you doing?
I'm doing great. And you?
Nice, thank you.
Good. First of all, appreciate everything you're doing on SALT and the leadership you're taking on this very important issue. I have a separate question though. Biden's tax plan is looking to eliminate 1031 exchanges. Do you have any views of that?
I don't think it'll happen.
Yeah. That would be great.
It's good. Nobody's making any commitments on anything. Nobody's making any commitments as to what they're going to support as far as the corporate tax, as far as the individual tax rate, as far as 1031 exchanges, capital gains, as far as, I think everything's on the table right now, but I think it's very unlikely that every one of these pieces are going to happen. The same as people are concerned about things here on Long Island, they're concerned about things in New York, and they're concerned in Illinois, and they're concerned in Iowa. I mean, one of the things we have to understand is the country is so different from place to place. If somebody makes $150,000 on Long Island and they own a $450,000 home, they're middle class. If somebody's making $150,000 and they own a $450,000 home in Oklahoma, they are on top of the world. They are on Easy Street, and they might even belong to a country club. And they got a great brand new house with granite countertops. And the same thing goes for Iowa and North Dakota. And there's just a lack of understanding about how different it is. When you hear about the coastal elites versus the flyover states, for example, there's just a lack of understanding from place to. I always knew the country was different. When I was young, we traveled across country with my parents, with five kids and the mother and father, with a station wagon and a camper in the back. We went to every state in the United States of America, except for Hawaii and Alaska. And I knew the country was different. I had no idea how different it was until I started working out at the congressional gym. And you're there and people are shaving and you hear conversations about, what do you do with your deer? We do deer jerky and do deer roast and, deer sausage. And we're going to kill 400,000 deer in Wisconsin this summer. I mean, this hunting season. So it's just very different. It's very different as far as religion. It's very different as far as incomes, cost of living. So what's important to us in New York is not necessarily what's important in other places. That's why building relationships is so important. That's why this was such a huge victory that the problem solvers convinced as many people as we did to vote for the January 6th commission, because it's all based upon we built relationships and we trust each other and we could talk about things. And we found it, the guy who's the Republican who did the negotiation was the ranking member, which means you're, the Republican for Homeland Security is a member of the problem solvers. So 1031 exchanges, of course, are very important for real estate people all over the United States of America. And I think they make a lot of sense. And it's not necessarily as important to everybody. I don't think the 1031s are going to happen, but I don't know.
Okay, appreciate everything
I
you're
don't think they're
doing.
going to get
Tom.
rid of them. I don't think.
Great, thank you.
Congressman Tom Suozzi, thank you for your time today. Listen, you've been a champion for us on the local level, county level, and now at the federal level. You're doing a great job. You're supported by the business community, and we're looking forward to working more with you. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Let's all hear it from Matt Cohen and his new job. Congratulations, Matt. It's a big deal. Young guy, exciting, great history. Excited to be working with you, and we're lucky to have you in that job. And thank you, everybody, for it's an honor for me to serve in Congress. These are very. When I was let me say one last thing. When I was a kid, I used to think, oh, my father was born in Italy. My grandparents lived through the Depression. My father fought in World War II. You know, the Civil Rights Movement, John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King. I said, what's the big thing that we're going to go through? I said, this is it, right? This is it right now. We're going through it right this minute. This is the big time in history that we can change things to make things better for people. And it's a great honor and a great responsibility for me to be in this position to try and have this impact. So I'm grateful to everybody for your help and support over the years. All right, everybody. Thanks very much.
Take care, Tom.
Thank you.
Hi, Tom.